As you get the big blue line out, we can start.
It's chugging along.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome today to the January 16th public board meeting of the Victoria Esquimalt Board. The first thing that we always do when we gather together is we ask if anyone would like to share their thoughts on the term for development. And a technical. Wizard. Heads up, very good, thank you. Would anyone like to offer a few words as a territorial acknowledgement? I love creating silence. Eventually, someone will.
Certainly. Good evening, Paul Farrow. We're here today at Victoria Police Department headquarters that's located on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen peoples, today known as the Esquimalt and Songhees Nations. We extend our appreciation for the opportunity to live, learn, and work on this territory. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul, much appreciated. Our next item obviously is to ask whether or not anyone feels compelled to offer a declaration of a conflict of interest. And if there are any items on the agenda for which they would need to step out. Sean, I assume that if you have something that you'd like to express, you'll put your hand up. Otherwise, I'll assume that you're in agreement with anything that we discuss or vote on. Seeing no declarations, we'll move on to the adoption of the public agenda. It has been produced and published and circulated. Are there any concerns about the agenda as presented? Seeing none, would someone like to move adoption of the agenda as published? Thank you, Paul. Seconded by Elizabeth. All those in favor? Opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you for that. Next is adoption and consideration of the public minutes from November 21st. Those have been circulated with the package and I believe are also available to the public. Any questions, comments, errors, additions, adjustments that we can make in minutes? And let's move on to the adoption of the minutes. Thank you, Elizabeth. Seconded by Tim. All those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. That takes us on to the board co-chair's update, and in consulting with my co-chair before her departure, we have nothing either one of us wish to share at this time today. So that moves us on to the committee's updates, and I'll just ask if any of the committee chairs would like to offer any reports. Governance.
Thank you, Mayor Alto. Yes, just on behalf of the governance, the main issue that should be reported to the public is the extension of the framework agreement that provides policing services to the City of Victoria and the Township of Esquimalt. That current agreement was scheduled to expire at the end of 2023. I'm pleased to report that in December, through good discussions between all parties, an extension to that framework agreement was signed, effectively extending the framework agreement for a 1-year period with 2 potential additional 1-year extensions with a term no later expiring December 31st, 2026. And very pleased to work with on behalf of the governance committee and this board, work with the city managers from both the Esquimalt and Victoria, and I was very pleased to work with them. And I think all parties are satisfied that we can continue to provide policing services to all the residents in those 2 areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul, and may I just echo the thanks of the board, I'm sure, for the work that you put in consulting with both of the communities and coming up with what I think is a very reasonable way forward. Absolutely essential, but we have some certainty associated with supporting the police service in both communities, so thank you again for that. Any other committee chairs wish to offer any information? Thank you for finance.
Yeah, I just, members of the public, we're continuing to work with the 2 municipalities in passing the 2024 budget. We've had a number of meetings, public meetings with them, continuing discussions with staff, and in the following week, not this week, the following week, we will be having presentations again at Esquimalt Council and Victoria Council to continue to dive into some of the details and answer more questions.
Elizabeth, and may I offer, I'm sure on behalf of both municipalities, that we appreciate the extra efforts that the committee has put in, particularly your leadership as chair. It's been a very thorough conversation this year, and I think that where we'll end up will represent. Any other committee chairs wish to offer?
Oh, I was just breathing, but
Not if you on the spot, maybe not.
it's been a little quiet on the HR front, but that's not to say things are not going to be moving forward in the next coming meetings. So stay tuned in this space. Thank you.
And those are the committee chair reports so far for our three very active committees, and thank you all for the work that you're doing there. That takes us on to item G of the public agenda, that is board member engagement update, and that's an opportunity for every member of the board to offer anything they'd like to share on any community or other activities at which they've been representing the board.
Thanks very much. I think this goes back into November because we didn't have a board meeting in December. So I've had the opportunity to participate in a number of events on behalf of the board. The volunteer and reserve appreciation dinner in November, which was really wonderful, and I really appreciated the opportunity to celebrate all of the volunteers and show some appreciation to the volunteers and reserves. I'm extremely pleased that I went, and also I got a chance to see the chief dance, so that was a wonderful addition. And November 30th, attended the Vic PD honors ceremony to learn about some of the commendations and heroic work, and members being congratulated for being Vic PD members for many, many, many years, 20, 25, and 30 years. So I really appreciated being there and enjoyed that. I got to come to the Christmas drop-in luncheon on December 13th, and that was really nice to connect with some of the members and to eat a lot of sushi. And I enjoyed coming to the recruit swearing in on January 4th. And I will reiterate my message from last time about how impressed I was with the recruits who were sworn in. So excellent job, Chris and everyone in HR. And I feel so positively about the last couple of recruit swearing-ins and the people that have decided to join the Vic PD family. I'm also not done, so you'll have to bear with me for a minute. I had an opportunity to attend a conference in Vancouver that was put on by the CACP and the Canadian Knowledge Police Network on authentic engagement with Indigenous communities. I know that Sean's going to speak to that in a little bit more detail when he speaks, but it was a really valuable opportunity to attend as a board member and hear some stories and learn about some things that are happening in different parts of the country, and to put a lot of history into context. So I really value the opportunity to be there. So thank you for allowing me that. And the last thing I want to talk about is that I went on a ride along again in November, and that when I went on my first ride along, it was over a night shift. So I went 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and it was suggested to me at the time that I come back in a day shift and have the opportunity to spend the daytime with the officers. And gain a different perspective. And it could not have been more valuable for me to do that. I really especially enjoyed the opportunity to go and walk with the bylaw officers and engage with some of the folks being moved along in their tents, the folks being greeted and communicated with. I've heard some messaging around the board table in the last number of years about the relationship between the unhoused and vulnerable community and Vic PD, and I'm interested to note that that was not my experience at all. It was completely positive, and I was so impressed with the positive relationship between the community members and Vic PD and the bylaw officers, and how warmly the officers that I were with engaged the members of the community, and it was completely reciprocal. There was a lot of camaraderie and genuine compassion and interest. And I also had the opportunity to look at what it looked like on a Monday afternoon to be with a sergeant who had some time. We were driving down a residential street and somebody flagged him down and said, can you come back at 4? There's always people speeding on the street. They use it as a cut through. And he said, well, if I can, I will. It gets about 3:45 and he said, you know what, we can go back. And we did, and we sat on the street, and that member of the community knocked on all of his neighbors' doors and brought all these people out, and he hosted a lawn party to appreciate how the response from Vic PD. And I just found it so valuable to gain the other perspective compared with a Friday night where it wasn't just responding all of the time, and there was an opportunity to do some sort of engagement. So I wanted to share my experience with that because I think it was really eye-opening for me in a lot of ways. And I don't want to put pressure on, you know, everybody going on ride-alongs all the time, but the idea to go on the daytime compared to the nighttime was very useful for me. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Michaela. Any other board members like to share any of their community experiences? I'll just add that I did have the opportunity to join Michaela and many other board members actually at the volunteer appreciation event. I'm very sorry I missed the chief dancing. But it really was an opportunity, I think, to appreciate the depth of support that is put into working with service in both communities, and how remarkable it is that people are willing to give of their time with no compensation at all, other than thanks and an annual dinner. And I think it really speaks to the depth of the relationship between the service and the community. So I'm very, very pleased to have had that opportunity again. It's the third or fourth time I've had a chance to be there. It was really quite a wonderful evening. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to go further on the report that Michaela suggested about the presented on the board on the honors ceremony that happened. I participated on that, and I was so impressed first off with the event, but hearing the stories of the employees who have just gone beyond the call of duty was very moving and very touching. But I was also impressed that honors were given to the civilian staff as well, and I'm very pleased to hear that. I think we sometimes forget about, you know, we have the civilian staff here who are, you know, in some sense, running the cogs of the machine, and I thought it was pretty cool that several of them were recognized for some really creative work. I believe it was IT in focus, if I remember correctly. It really makes me proud to be a board member here, and want again say thanks to everybody who is a member of this fine police department. So thank you.
I just want to take a note that one of our absent board members, Charlotte Huber, who is with us today, went really very much above and beyond on behalf of the entire board. Went out of her way to ensure that on Christmas Day there were some very special treats and gifts that were brought here to the station for the officers who were here on duty. And as a parent of Lego Mad children, I particularly appreciated that she really found the most incredible series of gifts. The main gift being a Lego police station and training center, followed by, I believe it was 35 little cars. And so that really spoke tremendously of the thought that goes into the relationship between the board and the service. And I just wanted to make sure that it was important for Charlotte to be recognized for the extra effort that she made on all of our behalf. So thank you to her. Okay, I think that's that item. I know we're moving on to item H, which is the report of the BC Association of Police Boards Directors Update. I believe, Michaela, is that back to you?
Yes, sorry, that's me again. Thank you to everybody who took the time to fill out the survey that went around related to that. As you're aware, we're in the middle of doing an ongoing strategic planning session for the BCAPB. We've been working with Watson for that. A number of us spent the day in Delta last week, sort of working through some of the challenges, revisiting the mandate of the BCAPB, and we will come back to the board with a finalized copy of that. I think that will be at the conference, but there might be some more discussion in advance. Certainly we'll be continuing to focus on advocacy, building shared learning resources, and networking and relationship building. But I think really a renewed fire has been lit under the BCAPB executive. There's certainly an opportunity to advocate on a number of shared issues to the province. And I think that you can look forward to seeing some more work going into dealing with some of the issues and bringing forward some of the things that could be improved for policing across BC. And just a little plug for the conference. It will be on April 11th and 12th. It's going to be really fun. So some more details about the speakers and sessions will come forward about that, but I think we're finalizing most of that tomorrow, so that will probably be at the next board meeting.
Very good, thank you for that. Any questions? And that leaves us up to item I, that's the Chief Constable's update. you, Chief.
Perfect, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the kind comments about Shauna's gifts on behalf of the board. Very well received, and so appreciate the effort and the thought. My chief's update is in your package. It's on page 4. I'm not gonna go through every activity from the last reporting period. I will highlight a few things, some of which Michaela's already highlighted. Externally, it was over the Christmas season, so participated in the Santa Claus parade in the city with Inspector Mike Brown and Deputy Chief McCrae for the Esquimalt Celebration of Lights Parade. Attended the Esquimalt Holiday Celebration Luncheon, served Christmas lunch at Our Place Society, attended the annual homeless memorial vigil that's held on the street to recognize all of the individuals that are experiencing homelessness that have lost their lives in the previous year. Also attended the swearing in ceremony for 7 recruits. Internally, there was a number of, other than the 7 recruits, also swore in a new experienced member coming over to Think PD from the military police. Attended, there's been a number of promotions from constable to the rank of sergeant. I attended a number of patrol briefings with Deputy Chief McCrae and with Inspector Lawson to promote individuals and just recognize their formal promotion to the rank of sergeant. Also did some check-in meetings with the IT department, with one of the patrol watches. Busy period, and also at City Council presented the Q3 Community Safety Report Card. So that's the formal part of the activity report, and if I may just kind of continue, I did want to highlight one letter that was a topic of discussion, and you would have seen it in the media. This letter was written from Minister Farnworth on December 21st, just advising mayors and police chiefs of the province and the PCRCMP entering on a joint initiative on public safety to look at an expansion of a single major crime service to all communities across Vancouver Island. Of course, the board is well aware that the Victoria Police Department already participates in a major crime unit known as VIMQ, which stands for Vancouver Island Integrated Major Crime Unit. We already serve many of the detachments and communities throughout the island, but it does not cover all of them. And so this would be looking at modernization and expanding the model to cover all island communities. I can tell you, when the board's aware of this, that homicides and suspicious deaths are extremely complex investigations. They require a high level of training, they require a tremendous amount of expertise, and they can be extremely resource intensive. So to look at a model that perhaps looks at all encompassing, covering all of the island, providing a better service to all residents across the island is something that we're open to looking at. It is really too early to make any comments, but the concept is a good one. I'd like to now turn it over to Deputy Chief Jamie McCrae to provide you with an update on operations.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Chief. Just since our last meeting in November, I just thought I'd highlight a few files just for your awareness. Some of them we've done media briefings on, so you may be aware of them, but I think it is important to touch on them. First, just most recently, earlier this week, again, we're in a surge of firearms and imitation firearms. So in a 2-day period, we see 6 imitation firearms. One of them was actually modified to allow it to shoot 22 caliber rounds. This is an ongoing problem. You may recall about 6 months ago, we did a fairly extensive media briefing on real and imitation firearms and the amount of seizures that we were seeing, where we demonstrated and showed firearms to the members of the media and asked them to try and select which ones were real and which ones were fake. And to no surprise, it's so challenging to tell the difference with even picking up and feeling them, and we were having people get them wrong. We are averaging in 2023, we averaged 2 seizures of real or imitation firearms per week, with over 97 real firearms seized in the year 2023, which is a fairly significant increase for us. So it is something that we continue to be challenged with, particularly in some areas of our community where we have intimidation. And I think when we are considering and looking at some of our populations, it doesn't need to be real in order to have them be intimidated, scared, and fearful for their safety. So we continue to work on that. You also may have seen in the media at the end of November and early part of December, we ran a project called Project Lifter. We've received many complaints in this past year from local businesses, both in the downtown core as well as in various other areas, including both Mayfair and Hillside shopping malls. Led by our Community Services Division and assisted with the Patrol Division, we put together a project. We had done some smaller projects over the course of 2023 and knew that the problem of significant theft was happening in stores, retail theft. We put a project together that was scheduled to last for 11 days. We put a lot of resources in place to help sustain it. And even we were surprised and overwhelmed by the numbers that we received. In fact, so much so that after 8 days, we had to stop the project. So in that 8-day period, we had 109 arrests. We had over $29,000 worth of property recovered and returned. We partnered with several different businesses in order to try and support their loss prevention teams and make sure that we were doing everything we could to try and help curb the problem. For the board's perspective for this, one of the things I'm raising this for is we now are of strong belief, we had a suspicion before that there is some underreporting that's occurring from some of our business community where they're not letting us know when theft is occurring. And just another piece of this is I think when we think, retail theft and shoplifting, we think of it as being a non-violent crime. And in some cases, it could be a kid going in and getting a pack of gum. And that's not what we were targeting and not what we arrested in this particular case. People are arriving in some of our retail stores with garbage bags, filling them up and walking out. Staff have little to no ability to intervene. The criminal backgrounds of these people are significant. In fact, of the 109 arrested, 21 of them had outstanding warrants at the time of their arrest. So this is something that continues to be a problem. Changes to the Bail Reform Act, which Chief Manock has spoken about last week in the media, really targeting violent offenders, which is an important improvement, and I'm glad to see that we're moving that way. But as Chief Manock has pointed out, there continues to be problems with property offenses similar to these, where they're repeating over again and not really having any significant impact. And if we're not even finding out about them, even worse. So just raise that as it was a successful project, but highlighted some concerns that we do have about reporting. You're aware that we are having demonstrations as it relates to the war in the Middle East on a weekly basis. In December, early part of December, we did have a significant incident at one of the protests where a protester was almost run over by a vehicle. This was taken very seriously immediately by our officers. Our officers attended and arrested the suspects right away. We laid charges, recommended charges to Crown Counsel of assault with a weapon and dangerous operation of a motor vehicle immediately, and engaged our hate crimes coordinators, major crime unit, and general investigative section right off the bat, recognizing the seriousness and the concerns that we have. That incident was so significant that the National Council of Canadian Muslims asked to meet with the chief and I to discuss further the concerns around safety for these demonstrations. We had a good conversation, a good meeting with them to try and reassure them that we take these things very seriously. Our hate crimes team is involved. Our hate crimes coordinator is connecting with Crown Counsel and Crown Counsel's hate crimes team. So it's something we take very seriously, the public safety aspect of this, but it is one of those events where when you have two very emotionally charged groups who are really, want to be able to get out there and show their support for their cause, it can create conflict at times. So we are resourcing these heavily. We are involved on a weekly basis, and we hope that we continue to have safe and peaceful protests over the course of the coming weeks as this continues on. The last file I'm going to comment on, and we did do a media release on this last week, is actually a file from 2014. I'm raising it for a couple of reasons. The first, because I was actually a detective in major crimes when this file came in, and I was primary on this file when it first started. We had a very serious stabbing in Beacon Hill Park right around now, as a matter of fact, in 2014. And it was a marginalized member of our community, very seriously injured, very nearly died, was in the ICU for a long period of time recovering from injuries. It was a very labor-intensive investigation on the front end. We did a lot of media. I personally did quite a bit of media to try and gather information, as this was a random stranger event. We did not know who did this particular crime. The member of our community who was injured, again, quite marginalized, even had members of his own family believe that he had self-inflicted these wounds. And we looked at it completely from an evidence perspective, and the evidence led us to show that no, there is a crime that was committed here, and we invested a lot of time in that. We were able to recover DNA from the suspect at the time, but not able to develop a proper profile of that. And then once the proper profile of the DNA was developed, it didn't match anything in the DNA data bank. I just raised this one because I want to give full credit to our forensics officers, our disclosure people, and our major crimes officers who then took over this investigation over the course of several years, where they were continually going back to it and trying to advance the investigation. And as the DNA technology improved, they were able to develop the profile. No hit in Canada, but then had the wherewithal to check the United States, where they did get a successful hit. A Canadian citizen who had illegally entered the United States actually had their DNA taken, and it led them to locate the suspect in Manitoba. Working with the partners in Manitoba, the suspect was brought back here and eventually charged with aggravated assault for this very serious crime, and just recently was placed into a mental facility as he was found not criminally responsible. As I mentioned, we spent a fair bit of time, and Paul, you touched on it earlier. We spent a fair bit of time talking about, you know, the front end work that we do, the big call come quick that we do. But what we don't spend a lot of time talking about is the tedious work in the background that happens. And sometimes it's by our disclosure civilians, sometimes it's by our forensics identification officers, sometimes it's by a historical case review officer who's literally going through every little tiny thing in a case to try and see, is there something that got overlooked or that could be done now that we couldn't have done at the time. All of that work takes tedious effort, and it could not happen without those people doing that. So I just bring this one up because I think it's a great acknowledgement of the work that's happening on the back end that we don't always spend a lot of time speaking about. That's all I have, Chief.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Are there any questions for the Deputy Chief on any of those matters? Chief, this is still part of your piece on the agenda. Anything to add?
No, that's it. I'm ready to move on to the next item for the.
And I think it's back to you on the equity, diversity, inclusion, and engagement.
Thank you. And that's on page 5 of 8. Pretty self-explanatory. The sessions I attended, there are 2 changes on January, when I prepared this report. That January 10th meeting with the Aboriginal Coalition and Homelessness staff was actually canceled. So I actually did not attend that, but there is an entry that I'd like to add, and that would be on January the 1st. I attended the Sikh temple for New Year's Day service. That's my update. Thank you.
Rich, any questions for the Chief? Seeing none, we'll move on then to correspondence. There are 2 items of correspondence. One in particular noting the reappointment, and thank you very much to the province for reappointing both Paul Farrow and Michaela Hayes. And you are now stuck with us till the end of 2025. Thank you for your continued service. And secondarily, I think a really important piece that I presume Colette is attached to the public agenda, and that's the summary of the commendations for various officers and staff for a remarkable, I think, story of the above and beyond service that these individuals in groups and sometimes individually have offered over and above their responsibilities to service. And so I think it's important to highlight the combinations that are there throughout the last fall, last September, December, and January of this year. Something to which we all need to pay attention, understanding that being a police officer and working with police services uniformly, weirdly, and sometimes a bit simplistically put, but it's more than a job. So I think it's important for us to acknowledge those efforts and to note that it is available for the public to review on the website. That does actually conclude the items that are on our agenda for our public meeting, unless there are any other last minute comments or any items that anyone would like to add. And then we'll look for a motion to adjourn.